My name is John H. Watson. In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London and attended the Second Afghan War as assistant surgeon. I served at the fatal Battle of Maiwand, and then I was struck on the shoulder by a Jazile bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed the subclavian artery. Worn with pain and weak from the prolonged hardships which I had undergone, my life was despaired of. I was so weak and emaciated that a medical board determined that not a day should be lost in sending me back to England. Under such circumstances, I finally gravitated to London, and spending such money as I had, considerably more freely than I ought, so alarming did the state of my finances become, that I soon realized that I had to leave the hotel, and to take up my quarters in some less pretentious and less expensive domicile. On the very day that I had come to this conclusion, I happened to meet young Stamford, who had been a dresser under me at Bart's.
"What are you up to now?"
Stamford asked in undisguised wonder. "Looking for lodgings," I answered, trying to solve the problem as to whether it is possible to get comfortable rooms at a reasonable price.
"That's a strange thing,"
remarked my companion.
"You are the second man today that has used that expression to me."
"And who was the first?" I asked.
"Sherlock Holmes."
Young Stamford looked rather strangely at me.
"He is a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science. As far as I know, he is a decent fellow enough."
"If you really want someone to share the rooms and the expense, I am the very man for him," I said. "How could I meet this friend of yours?"
"He is sure to be at the laboratory,"
returned my companion. Along the way, he kept reminding me to be mentally prepared, and described to me the strange things he had seen Holmes do in the past. As he spoke, we arrived at the chemical laboratory and found that Sherlock Holmes, who was bending over a distant table absorbed in his work.
"Dr. Watson, Mr. Sherlock Holmes,"
said Stamford, introducing us.
"How are you?"
Holmes said cordially.
"You have been in Afghanistan, I perceive."
"How on earth did you know that?" I asked in astonishment.
"Never mind,"
said he. And then he showed us his discovery about hemoglobin, which provided an infallible test for blood stains, whether the blood is old or new.
"We came here on business,"
said Stamford, interrupting the excited Holmes, and explaining the reason why he had brought me here. Sherlock Holmes seemed delighted at the idea of sharing his rooms with me, and then we started a cross-examination to get acquainted with each other.
"I think we may consider the thing as settled, that is, if the rooms are agreeable to you."
Holmes smiled, with a merry laugh. "When shall we see them?"
"Call for me here at noon tomorrow, and we'll go together and settle everything,"
he answered. "All right, noon exactly," said I, shaking his hand. After that, Stamford and I left Holmes working among his chemicals, and we walked together towards my hotel. "By the way," I asked suddenly, stopping and turning upon Stamford, "how the deuce did he know that I had come from Afghanistan?" My companion smiled an enigmatical smile.
"That's just his little peculiarity,"
he said.
"A good many people have wanted to know how he finds things out."
We met next day, as Holmes had arranged, and inspected the rooms at number 221B, Baker Street, of which he had spoken at our meeting. The bargain was concluded upon the spot, and we gradually began to settle down and to accommodate ourselves to our new surroundings. Holmes was certainly not a difficult man to live with. Even his habits were regular. His very person and appearance was such as to strike the attention of the most casual observer, however, especially for the one who had objectless and monotonous life like me. It was worth mentioning that within eccentric limits his knowledge was so extraordinarily ample and minute that his ignorance had fairly astounded me, such as he was ignorant of the Copernican theory and of the composition of the solar system.
"You see,"
he explained,
"I consider that a man's brain originally is like a little empty attic, and you have to stock it with such furniture as you choose. It is a mistake to think that little room has elastic walls and can distend to any extent. It is of the highest importance, therefore, not to have useless facts elbowing out the useful ones.
All the knowledge which he possessed was such as would be useful to him or to his work. My companion had many acquaintances, and those in the most different classes of society. When any nondescript strangers put in an appearance, Sherlock Holmes used to beg for the use of the sitting room, and I would retire to my bedroom.
I have to use this room as a place of business,
he said.
And these people are my clients.
The opportunity for him to confess all soon came. It was upon the 4th of March, as I have good reason to remember.
I'm a consulting detective. When these fellows are at fault they come to me, and I manage to put them on the right scent. I have a turn both for observation and for deduction that I depend upon them for my bread and cheese.
Sherlock Holmes remarked calmly.
You appeared to be surprised when I told you, on our first meeting, that you had come from Afghanistan.
You were told, no doubt.
Nothing of the sort. There were such steps, however. The train of reasoning ran, here is a gentleman of a medical type, but with the air of a military man. Clearly an army doctor, then. He has just come from the tropics, for his face is dark, and that is not the natural tint of his skin, for his wrists are fair. He has undergone hardship and sickness, as his haggard face says clearly. His left arm has been injured. He holds it in a stiff and unnatural manner. Where in the tropics could an English army doctor have seen much hardship and got his arm wounded? Clearly in Afghanistan. The whole train of thought did not occupy a second.
It is simple enough, as you explain it. I still remained some lurking suspicion, and then fortunately found a messenger, who was presumed by Holmes should be a retired sergeant of Marines.
For Mr. Sherlock Holmes,
messenger said, stepping into the room and handing my friend the letter. Here was an opportunity of taking the conceit out of Holmes. So I said the messenger, in the blandest voice, what your trade may be.
A sergeant, sir, Royal Marine Light Infantry, sir.
He clicked his heels together, raised his hand in a salute, and was gone. The letter came from Gregson, a well-known detective of Scotland Yard, with his plea to my companion, and to satisfy my curiosity, Holmes decided to take the job. We came to the Brixton Road with cab, and then went to the house of number 3, Lauriston Gardens upon foot, which was insisted by Holmes. Rather than hurrying into the scene and plunging into the study of this case, Holmes Lowndes started his scrutiny, and then kept his eyes riveted upon the ground around house. Twice he stopped, and once I saw his smile, and heard his utter an exclamation of satisfaction. At the door of the house, we were met by Gregson. Holmes satirized the efforts of Constable for protecting the scene and asked several questions that sounded inconsequent, as always. Then we went and explored the house, especially that dark grimy apartment which the mysterious affair had occurred. The solitary window was so dirty that the light was hazy and uncertain, giving a dull grey tinge to everything, which was intensified by the thick layer of dust which coated the whole apartment, and our attention was centred upon the single grim motionless figure which lay stretched upon the boards. Lestrade, the colleague and rival of Gregson, was standing by the doorway and narrated his confusion about the case.
There is nothing new under the sun.
As Holmes spoke, he had approached the body, and, kneeling down, examined it intently. At last, he sniffed the dead man's lips, and then glanced at the soreness of his patent leather boots. So swiftly was the examination made. 4 men came in and carried out the body by the order of Gregson. As they raised him, a ring tinkled down and rolled across the floor. My friend seemed more convinced of something and asked to examine things on the pockets of body. At this moment, Lestrade obviously found something which was overlooked by Gregson and exhibited to us in a pompous and self-satisfied manner. Raish. In the darkest corner of room, there was scrawled in blood-red letters a single word.
You mark my words, when this case comes to be cleared up you will find that a woman named Rachel has something to do with it.
After the deduction of Lestrade based on this word was narrated, my companion bursted into an explosion of laughter. After that, he whipped the tape and glass from his pocket, and his figure dashed backwards and forwards through the covert until all examination he needed had done.
What do you think of it, sir?
Both of detective asked. Holmes did not answer directly, but asked to speak with the constable who found the body, and hence Lestrade gave him the name and address.
The murderer was a man. He was more 6 feet high, was in the prime of life, had small feet for his height, wore coarse, square-toed boots and smoked a Trichinopoly cigar. He came here with his victim in a four-wheeled cab which was drawn by a horse with 3 old shoes and 1 new one on his offer leg. In all probability the murderer had a florid face, and the fingernails of his right hand were remarkably long. These are only a few indications, but they may assist you.
Before leaving, Holmes unexpectedly stated the specific characteristics of the murderer, which made these 2 rivals open-mouthed behind him, with an incredulous appearance. "So do I,"
If this man was murdered, how was it done?
asked Lestrade.
Poison,
Said Sherlock Holmes curtly, and strode off.